Welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes. Every Thursday, I host an episode of either Behind the Scenes or Transformation Time. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and today's guest speaker is Melissa Lee. On Behind the Scenes, our guest speakers are real estate investors, and they are here to share their experiences with you to help you learn through their experiences. On Behind the Scenes, we get to talk about their real estate strategy that they worked on. We also get to hear about the numbers that they went through. And the biggest part, the most fun part, is the problems. We get to hear about what problems they encountered, how they solved them, and if it was something new, then what they plan to do for the next time so that it doesn't happen again, or just to mitigate, because obviously sometimes we can't always completely remove a problem, but we can always try to reduce it for sure. So I hope you guys are excited and ready to bring on Melissa. Just give me a second here. I don't know what. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm awesome. I'm great. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, man. I'm so sorry for being late as well.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So let's get started, and let's just start with telling the viewers a little bit about yourself. What kind of real strategies are you into? What's your experience like? Whatever you'd like to share.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess I started real estate investing in 2018. Well, that's when I first started learning about it. And then from there, I went to a Keyspire 3-day event, and that kind of got me excited to say, okay, let's go find a property. So my partner Larry, unfortunately, he can't join me today because we're in different places. But we decided, hey, let's go find a house hacking opportunity so that we can live in one unit and then rent out the other. So we did shortly after going to the event. I think it took us about a month until we found a realtor. We were like, okay, let's look at a few properties. I think we looked at about 5, and then we're like, okay, let's put an offer. And then we ended up actually getting it. I remember at that time I was like, oh man, we definitely overpaid. And this was in 2019. And I was like, oh my gosh, we overpaid. The realtor didn't really help us much. But looking back at hindsight, it was definitely a really great deal for us. I think we got lucky with the market. And from there, that was our first project. We ran through a lot of obstacles. I think a lot of other real estate investors do, where bad contractors, and maybe we could dive into it afterwards, but we went through 2 contractors and then ended up being ghosted by our last one. So we ended up finishing the work ourselves. We decided, hey, grab a hammer and screwdriver and the drill and nail gun, and let's learn it. So we decided to go on YouTube, learned how to do some renovations, and we also had help from some of our friends, our investor friends who are contractors. They were a great help in regards to giving us tips on how much things should cost roughly doing it ourselves, what we should subcontractor versus hey, what we can do ourselves, like painting, or if for the door installation, maybe it's worth actually getting a contractor to do that, which I agree. But we ended up doing it ourselves. We're like, nah, we want money, so we did it ourselves, but we should have hired that out. And then from there, once we actually finished it, that actually took us 2 years, that project. So it was budgeted for 4 months.
A little over the time frame, right?
Yeah, just a bit, right?
That's so funny. But the good thing is, I feel like with these things, things happen, but you get such great learning experiences from them.
Yeah.
And I think it's also always great is, especially if it's your first one, being a little more hands-on, to be honest, especially if you're going to do projects that are real estate related, renovation related. I think it's good, even though your intention was not to do it, it was to hire someone. I think, to be honest, it was probably ended up turning out good in the sense like that, because you do need to know a lot, at least in my opinion, about how renovations work. So if you are going to do like projects of a flip or like a burr, where at least you have an idea of how it is. And you can kind of then speak their language a little more, or you just understand the contractors a bit more.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just like because we went to buy all our materials ourselves and, you know, we were budgeting, bookkeeping, everything, we realized like how much it actually cost to do a lot of the work. And we were actually surprised at the end of the project that it didn't actually cost us as much as we thought it would. You know, like, I don't know, in our imaginations, we were thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to cost us a lot for materials, all these tools. And then in reality, it was like, oh, I can't remember how much it took, like maybe 30,000 to actually finish the whole project. And it was surprising. And then you kind of get a better understanding when you work with contractors and when they quote you, it's like, does this number actually make sense, you know, for the time that they're going to put the time that they need and the materials that they need. So I definitely agree with you on that part.
Yeah, 100%. And then we do have a question. Someone was saying, what's the biggest learning in that project? So what's your biggest learning experience? It was the big one.
The biggest learning experience in that project, I think for us, honestly, it was taking control of it. Because it was our first project, and I think for a lot of like newer like investors, or especially if you're like a bit more of like a pushover like us, like we're really like, well, I don't know, not going to the contractor, clearly. But like realizing, hey, this is your project and you take control of it. It's not the other way around. So when we started, we let the contractor decide, like, you know, what kind of flooring we're putting in, what kind of materials, everything. Like we thought it was on them, their responsibility to decide that. And then we didn't realize afterwards, like, oh, wait, like we have so much more, like we should have put so much more control, because once we give them that control, not easy to kind of like say like, hey, how's it going? What's, you know, how's the progress and everything? Like they could be really like wishy-washy at that point. And so I think that was the biggest thing, just understanding, hey, this is your project, this is your money as well. So feel free to ask all the questions that you want and clarity. And like, if you don't understand, just ask questions. Because in the end of the day, this is like, our project was supposed to be $80,000. So it's not like small chunk of money. And like, this is all our savings, you know, from years of like working. And then it ended up being like $150,000. So really control of your project, I think it's a huge thing, especially when you start.
And I think that's a great point that you make, actually, because not only the control, but just the part that you're talking about allowing the contractors to do what they want. I feel that that's actually a very common thing that a lot of people do. A lot of people have this conception of contractors that, like they should know what to do. So it's just like you give them that like freedom, like you do what you need to do. I just need, for example, like floors done, walls painted, and like a bathroom done or something, you know? And then, but then they expect like the contractors to do things. But there's so many different problems in that. Not in one, you were saying, you know, then if their control was like a little bit in the sense of like they were just doing whatever they wanted and then maybe like ghosting you or whatever. But also in the sense of just like, for example, they put the floors and then you don't like them. Or I actually knew someone that, because there's many different types of contractors too that people don't realize. So I knew someone who they kind of did the same thing. They expected their contractors to do everything, and it was a full gut job. And what happened there was that their contractor was a builder contractor, and builders actually do things differently than residential contractors do, the ones that deal with the clients and stuff, not investors, but specifically clients. And so, for example, a very simple example was that they built the shower was like built all around, and then they just had one door, where like if you're going, let's say, more luxury, you probably could have done that all with glass and it would have looked nicer. But because this guy's a builder and he just builds, you know, cookie cutter houses. He's used to like a different style of actually doing it. So that's also, I think, an important thing to learn about is like what kind of contractor do you have? Like, what is their kind of experience in the types of projects they do? Because that's also another thing. For example, a contractor that deals with the residential regular clients compared to an investor, that is also very like a huge difference, you know, because you deal with, for example, residential. Well, to be honest, people say they have budgets on the residential side, but they don't. As soon as they love something, they're like, I'll spend that extra $1,000 because I need that extra bling, whatever, to look nice. Whereas us as investors, we're very budget oriented, right? And so you're like, I need this to be within the budget. And so something even like that is also like important. It's just like knowing the kind of like what kind of work they've done and who they've worked with, like that. Because if it is, let's say they've only been on the residential side, then you may want to kind of like rein them in and make them realize we're in a budget, you know, like
Yeah.
this isn't like others where it's like if I feel like splurging extra, it's gonna happen, you know, most likely not. Normally you wouldn't want to do that kind of thing in the investor side.
And I definitely get you, like, in regards to, like, looking at also, like, if it's going to become a rental, right? Looking at all the other rentals around that neighborhood. Like, are they using laminate instead of quartz countertops? And realizing, okay, like, is it going to be worth my money to even, like, invest in a higher quality or not, right? Like you said, that's great.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, and exactly what you're saying, right? And that's kind of like even those like what you're saying, looking around at what's happening around you, right? Like a contractor's not going to do that, right? Like this is our job to be like, you know, like what is happening and what do we want to do, right? Because it's like that. Like if the contractor's used to putting down like let's say dark floors everywhere, and then gray is the theme, then all of a sudden now we're off the theme, and you know things change, right?
It could be a thing, though, for contractors. Maybe they go like, hey, you know, we think for you, you know, that's their oh,
But it would have to be like an investor contractor, right? And with a specific niche, you know.
not bad.
But that was a great point because like that I feel like yes, maybe like I don't think it was also so much that you're a pushover, but I think it was also the expectation, which I feel like I do notice a lot of people do have that expectations that you kind of can leave a contract to do what they want. And and so you're not alone. I feel like I've seen many people, I've actually seen other people that told me they're like, oh, I thought they, you know, like they would just do it. Like kind of like I thought they could read my mind. And I'm like,
Really.
they're not fortune tellers, sorry to tell you.
And I think the thing too is like because when you start off, you don't know anything.
Mhm.
Everything that sounded good to us, and even if they were delayed, and we brought it up. Like we're like, hey, you said that you know this was supposed to be done this week. Why wasn't it done? They make up this like excuse, and then they're like, oh, but we did this small chunk, and then you're like, oh, okay, I guess that makes up for it, you know. And
Mhm.
then you get
Yeah.
scared, and then it kind of prolongs it even longer now, and they keep on doing it. And of course, like as they like keep on prolonging it, there's more and more, you know, that they
Mhm.
done.
Yeah. And that's another thing that you're saying that I think is good is the asking questions and what you guys did, like you guys actually doing the work. Because one, asking questions is another thing. I had another investor friend that was an issue is that this was an electrician, their electrician would get mad at them for asking them questions. And to me, it's like if someone's getting mad at you, like change it. You need someone else because as investors, we need to have a good understanding of what's going on to make sure we can make decisions.
Yeah.
So I want to say like that's a great good point that you also put because it is important to be able to ask a lot of questions. And if you're asking a lot of questions at the beginning and they're already getting upset, you should probably go like next, you know, like because you want someone that explains you what's going on. Because again, like the investor world's so different. It's not like residential where it's just like I just care about what it looks like, you know.
No,
In the investor side, we do care a lot about other things, and just understanding the process is very important because we're obviously going to continually buy property, so we need to understand.
and it's nice to like kind of like you said, like build that team. And if you like use someone you don't like them, well, it's like okay, well, next we're going to find the next person, and maybe like they'll join our power team or whatnot. Because yeah, my friend, one of my friends was just telling me she was doing a plumbing issue, and the plumber, like, because it was such a like emergency, it was like, okay, the first person that they could find, right, on Google. And she absolutely just did not like the guy because he was super rude. Like, she was asking like questions because, no, you're charging $300 to do this, like being here to pull out hairs. Like, we have more questions for you, to clearly understand like what's the issue here with our plumbing system. And like, he was just giving like these dirty faces and just being really rude. And I think, if that's the case, it's like, yo, I don't even want to work with you, that if you're that
Yeah,
type of
100%. Yeah, 100%. So do you want to run through? I feel like we went through like halfway, but we were like in the middle. So I don't know if we should continue with the problems and maybe go through the numbers afterwards. Maybe we'll do that,
okay.
guys. If you guys want to hear about the numbers, now you have to wait for the end. We're going around things backwards now. So with the so you were talking about that you had problems with the contractors, and then like the last one ghosted. So what was like even the issues? Like why did you have to go through so many?
Mhm.
Yeah, like why would you even guess like the first person ghosted you? Or just curious on like, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, so the person that ghosted us, they were our second contractor that we got in. Um, and I guess like we met them at the very beginning of our project, and they were one of the contractors that we were getting a quote from, but we ended up saying like no to them. But they actually, when we were having issues with our first contractor, they guided us through like how to deal with them. And I think
Mm.
we built a bond in that case. So that's how we met the second contractor. Why we think they kind of ghosted us at the end was like, I think, I don't know, deep down, like they were really good people. So they knew that we got really like screwed over, and like we got, like, we're fairly young, and we got like quite a bit of chunk of money, like kind of like basically gone from the first contractor. So they were really lenient on their quote. They were basically saying that this is, the quote to cover just the materials and like the basics, but they're really not upcharging us much. And the issue with that is if projects prolong long enough, contractors aren't making money, they're not gonna want to continue doing the work. It's like,
Mm.
I'm doing this work, but I'm not even getting paid for this. That feeling, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things we learned. We're like, hey, pay your contractors and everyone well, so that they want to work for you. Otherwise, if they feel like
Mhm.
they're getting the short end of the stick, they're going to try to prolong it. They're like, they won't care as much for your project. So that was one thing. A second thing was, I guess, it was COVID time, and they had an elderly person in the house. So they were very cautious in coming to our property when we lived in there. So they were saying like, hey, it's COVID, and that's, I mean, whether it was excuse or real reason, like they were going through a lot with the family issues. Um, so they kind of prolonged it for a very long time. Like they were saying, hey, we can't come in because, my mother's, going to the hospital. And we're like, okay, that's fair. We want to be considerate as well. And then another time was, hey, when we go in there, you can't be there. And then we're like, okay, where else do we go then? So we had to like actually go to a co-working space while they worked on our project. And this prolonged for a really long time. And I think it got to the point where Larry and I was like, hey, we need to get this done. And they just weren't moving. And then I think, so they ghosted us right after Christmas. So right before Christmas, I thought it was a nice email. I sent it and I was saying like, hey, this is what we're noticing, whatnot. This is what, you've done and what's outstanding. Um, so clearly we've paid you for this much, and, we're thinking about, why don't you like, take some time off. Like we were trying to be nice. So we were saying like, hey, why don't you take some time off and, figure out, the family stuff because you're going through a lot. And we were just like, I think they were like short 10K from like how much they actually got done. And we were asking for that refund back. And we're saying like, hey, so that we could finish the project and hire someone else to finish it. Because like, they weren't moving, and we knew they were going through a lot of family stuff. So we thought that was the best case. Like, hey, finish your family stuff and then just give back the part that we surplus to you, like we gave over, and then we could finish the project. And I guess they took it the really wrong way, like totally south. Like we got a really angry email back, saying like, I don't remember what they said, but they were really angry. How dare you? I think they were like, how dare you say that? Blah, blah, blah. We've been working so hard, for you guys. And I was so shocked. I was like to Larry, I thought that was the nicest email I've ever written, but maybe not. And
Well, you know what it could have also been though? It's like, it probably was a nice email, but it's something I noticed during COVID, especially the beginning. People were very much on edge on anything. Like, I just felt like driving on the road or walking in the grocery store, and people would like flip out if you were like too close or like restricting them. So I felt like the tensions, to be honest, were like super high at the beginning of COVID. Like it was like insane. Like people were just like so angry for anything, I felt like.
like they would just get ticked off on anything you say, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
I don't know. I noticed that. I felt like it was kind of crazy.
That factor, definitely, 100%. And I think,
And especially if they're already on edge because of family issues already, I feel like you might have been like the top of the stack, that just like threw them over.
but I was the tipping point.
Yeah.
I think, like in my mind, I thought it was a very nice email, but when someone else reads it, they could read it in a totally different voice.
Yeah.
That.
Sorry, go on. Finish.
Go ahead.
Oh no, and I was just gonna also say actually that something that we do, maybe some advice, and for everyone else, is that do it in a phone conversation first, and then send out like the email of just the like what happened in the conversation, because the email is like with what we do. I mean, it's great that you did the email because we need that confirmation for anything that happens. You always have to have like these proof of concepts. But like you said, like I feel like in email you can just like misinterpret like everything. Just like it can go like totally left, and you're like, I was going right. What happened?
I think that's a huge point with like the phone call, and like people could hear your voice and kind of like, yeah, exactly. And then if they do misunderstand something, hey, you could clarify it right away, and
yeah,
that like connection versus email, it's like almost emotionless sometimes. That's a great point. And also with the documentation, that was a huge thing we learned after the first contractor. Like we literally documented every single meeting. Like I would write meeting notes of like what we talked about, and then I would also write the action items that he said he was going to do for the next week, and then I would send it to myself, Larry, and the contractor. And so that if the contractor had any like, hey, no, this is not what we talked about, well, that's your chance to say that was not what we talked about. And this came into really good hands because like, I hope no one has to go through lawsuits, but things happen, and we had to go through small claims court afterwards, and we used all our emails as like a proof and evidence to say like, this is what we talked about at this meeting. This is what we talked about at this meeting. As you can see, like, so we use that as evidence to kind of say like, hey, we tried our best in regards to what we did and like what he didn't do and what we didn't do. So documentation.
That's a very good point. It's so important to, especially like that in the investor world. Actually, to be honest, in any kind of renovations, it doesn't even have to be investor renovations, just because exactly you said, at least if something happens, everything is there for you. And like exactly said, if you have to go through lawsuit or just even like if they dispute something, you're like, it's in the email.
Exactly. Even calls, you have to like transcribe that, and say like, this is what we talked about in this phone call, So
yeah, it is very important because I do notice like it is funny sometimes, like it's like two people have conversations and they end with two different like solutions for some reason. Like one thinks one thing and the other one's thinking the other, and you're just like, oh, we have like some communication issues. At least it's like in the email. You put it in an email, and then everyone reads it, and then maybe rediscuss. Oh, I thought it was this or that, or confirming at least.
Exactly, that's a great point. Like making sure we're all on the same thing.
Yeah, because sometimes I've had that happen. It's like people are, or they think certain other things are important, and they're saying things, and you're just like, we are on different pages for some reason. What happened?
Like, you sure we were in the same conversation? Like, you sure?
Yeah, sometimes you're like, were we in the same room?
So true.
That's funny. So with that, so tell the is the lawsuit and everything done?
No. So
Still going on.
yeah, I don't know.
You're like on year 3 on that?
Um,
Not lawsuit, I mean a project in general, total, like, because technically I feel like since the lawsuit's going, the project's still going, no?
yeah, yeah. It. When did they make a lawsuit? They actually did the lawsuit to us. They sued us, not we sued them. Like, odd enough, they sued us, and we're like, oh,
This was the first contractor, right? The first contractor suing you guys. And then the second one disappeared on you guys.
yeah. The second one disappeared. We said it was like a little amount that wasn't worth like going through small claims. We were like, you know what? Let it be. You know, that's it. You know, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
But the first contractor, I think they sued us. Like they sent us like the claims and whatnot in like 2020, the beginning of 2020, and it's still going on. It's 2023 now, so it's any small claims court clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, sued us, and we had to defend it, so we wrote our claim and whatnot, and then we submitted it back, and right now it's pending on their side. So clearly, like, honestly, they have like multiple claims against them right now, so I don't know how they're going to win and whatnot, but we're waiting for them to kind of answer and file for a court date. So we did have like a hearing, and he was there. You could clearly tell the judge was definitely on his side because nothing he said made sense. So we're waiting for them to put a trial date, but it seems, of course, he has not done that yet. So we were like, okay, we'll just go with him and see where he takes it.
Yeah. Well, it's also like that. People sometimes will do things emotionally, and then like that afterwards they start seeing, what was really like, was it just the emotions got the best of you, and and then there's actually nothing to, claim for.
I think the thing is, like I guess he assumed because we were fairly young, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna send this lawsuit to these like 2 kids, and then it's either they go to court or they pay money. And it's like, I think there were some couples that ended up paying, because like you either have to pay, and he was probably claiming for the 35,000 because that's the max for a small claims court, or it's like you have to rebuttal it. You can't really, like, we tried settling. Actually, we asked for a settlement, and we said, hey, we're willing to lower the amount that you owe us to, I think, 20,000. So instead of the 35,000, give us 20,000, and we're willing to like remove, like, end this small claims court, and let's just like move on with it. And then no, he didn't accept it. He was like, no, I'm not accepting this. We're going to court. And I was like, okay, like, you just have, like, there's no way. And then we're actually incurring like lawyer fees too, right? Like, we have to go through lawyers now, and I don't know what his game plan is at the end of the day, but we weren't gonna pay him.
So I'm surprised, like you said, what was he suing for? Because
Honestly,
you need it, because it's, yeah, I'm curious on what he is suing for.
that's what we were shocked about too. So when we fired him, he only did demolition. He didn't even finish demolition because we were waiting for the permits before he could actually finish demolition. Mm-hmm. And in his claim, he stated that he finished our whole project. He added $90,000 of value onto our house, even though it was not even livable at that time. Like, all the electrical was cut. And then he was also suing. His last line was so funny. He was said, I would like $10,000 because we were the defendants. The defendants were high-handed and oppressive. And I was like, you're asking for $10,000 because we were mean? And I was like, man, we let you celebrate your daughter's birthday when it was her. No, we gave you, I don't know, a birthday gift, I think, on his birthday too. And I was offended.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, you see,
and it's funny, but you can tell that's purely emotional, because like, you have to come with proof when you go to court. And if he's saying that he's done like all this amazing work, he needs to come with pictures. Where are those pictures to show that he completed it? You know, like.
that, that it was just so confusing, like, because his claim was only 13 pages. I think 3 emails, and he honestly, we found a fraudulent like thing that he did. He actually changed like some of the dates and numbers when we had like the copy with like in the email. So we're like, you sent us this through an email, and we have the original. So, and it was different than what he even put in. And then, so his claim was like 13 pages, very short, very repetitive. And then Larry and I, we wrote our own small claims, because you can write your own small claims, or you could hire a paralegal or a lawyer to do it. But we wanted to save on the cost, because we were cheap and students back then, so we were like, we can write our own. Ours was like 70 pages long of like evidence and like what he did wrong, like what he didn't do. And so school came in handy for that. We were like, yes, I know how to write these.
That's amazing. I'm curious. I'm sure you guys will end up winning it in the end, because like you said, like, it's just like it doesn't make sense. But and it's very interesting how people's views on things are, right? Like the way they see things can be like so right in their eyes, and you're just kind of like, am I like not wearing my glasses today? Because I'm not seeing the same thing.
We're on the same page here. Like, like, where's the logic? There's some people that, yeah, it just doesn't make sense, honestly. Like, there's no reasoning, honestly, at that point. You just
yeah, it's crazy. Any other things that in this? And then you had your other guy that ghosted you. Yeah. Oh wait, you already said that was because the price was so low that he just couldn't make it work anymore, right? You were saying?
It just seemed like it wasn't motivating enough for them to actually like work anymore. And I think that's where like we kind of learned, like, hey, pay them for what they're worth, honestly. Like, pay them so that they want to work. They don't feel free, and it's almost like a chore at that point, because they're probably not going to.
And did you ever like you tried messaging him or something, and he just like nothing, like he just disappeared?
Like we called him multiple times, we emailed, we like texted, like we tried every avenue that we knew from them, and then no. We were contemplating whether to go check out their house, because we know where they live, but we're like, okay, that's a bit, you know what? It's not worth it at that point. Like, they were a bit of a pain to work with anyway, so we'll just let it go. And they were helpful. They did help us for our first one, so we were grateful for that. And so we said, they're only like $10K off of like what we thought they were at, and for $10K, we thought honestly it wasn't worth it to go through all the hassle. You might as well cut your losses at that point and move on and continue the project.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up something else that I've also noticed that happened last year, I believe it was. No, I think 2 years. Yeah, a little bit last year, but a lot more 2 years ago in 2021. I saw this happening a lot more. But I think it's coming up again, and that's why I want to say it, is that because prices of materials and things are changing so much, ghosting may happen a lot more. And I felt like that was happening a lot in 2021, because it happened to us. We hired someone, a landscaper, and they just didn't even come to the project at all. Like, nothing was started. And I think what happened was exactly what you're saying. Like, the price was super low, and the project ended up taking a little longer than expected, or basically we got all our quotes at the beginning of our project, and this project was like a 6 to 8 month project, and landscaping comes at the very end, right? So it was like basically 6 months later, and the guy ghosted us, and I think the reason why he ghosted us is because the prices had drastically changed so much that he just couldn't justify it, and I think he felt bad being like, instead of 14,000, now it's like 30,000. Like, it was that much of a drastic change of how much materials had changed in that time frame.
Yeah.
And I think he was just like, they're gonna think I'm crazy, and then they just like never came. Like, was like an excuse after an excuse after an excuse. And we were like 1 or 2 months away that we had to put the house on the market. And so I wanted to say that because I think that's maybe happening again. I think we may be going through another thing of where materials and things will go up this year or next year. So I just want to bring that up because that ghosting, I think, may happen again. And it's like to prepare yourself because it's kind of strange because I don't even know how do you, because you don't want to tell like, hey, a contractor, or for us, it's more subcontractors because we do a lot of we do contract, but we tell our subcontractors, like, you don't want to tell them like, hey, in case prices go up, don't worry, like, you can bring up the value, but then you want them to take advantage of you because they'll be like, oh, like, let's add another 20K, and then you're just like, what happened?
Yeah, I was like, wait, where'd the money, like, where'd the extra money come from? Like,
yeah.
the cost.
It's like now you guys are just charging us more for the fun of it because we gave you that. It's like finding that happy medium because like that, like in our situation, like landscaping was the last thing to get done and we were going to the market and we couldn't last any longer. And so, and I didn't realize it until after the fact because you just like you start same thing, like we're all connected, we're all chatting with each other and you're just hearing things happen. And it was just something that I think that's what it was because like that, like our materials went up so much just on what we had to do, let alone like our subcontractors, right? It was just like insane how much that year it was just prices were just like going up like crazy.
On that note, like, did you put a deposit for the landscaper and then they ghosted you and they kind of kept that, or like, like what happened? Yeah,
I think we did give them a deposit because we did try to ask for it back. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really that much because the way how we work, I mean, again, another tip for people, we will give a deposit, but we don't give a very big deposit until the day of, when they're there. And yeah, I don't remember actually. I don't know how it worked because he did because they never started. That's what it was because they had some equipment there and they had brought some material, but they hadn't started. And then like that, like they brought some equipment or some tools, not equipment. They brought some tools, some like what is it called? I forget, interlock stuff and but it was very little. Like it was their extras from another job that they brought, and then they were just gonna buy more of it because we liked it, and they were just gonna buy more of it. So it was like their extras from another job, and they left their tools and stuff there. They didn't even come back for their stuff. Like they like really like not. And again, it wasn't very many things. It was just like maybe 3 tools or something. But yeah, I think they were like the trade-off because we kind of like held their stuff in ransom. We're like, give us our deposit back or you're not getting your stuff back. It was like one of those like type of scenarios.
I was gonna ask, what tools were they? What brand? Depending on the brand, I'll take them. What? We're good.
Yeah. It was funny. Like we tried that technique, it didn't work, and again, it wasn't really that much money, and then so we're just like whatever. Like they kept the deposit. Like we didn't even keep the stuff. We ended up throwing it out, and then we just like we did what we had to do.
So how? I guess like on that case, like if someone was to do this multiple times, let's say like they were trying to get a landscaper and they kept on putting like a bit of deposit because like they usually ask for it, right? Like to save that spot, like. And you keep on getting ghosted and you keep on losing your deposit. Like, how would you, because I know you do a lot of like, your husband's a contractor and you do a lot of subcontracting yourselves. Like, how would you mitigate that risk to ensure like you're not?
So it shouldn't happen a lot. Like, again, in our case, it happened because right now is the time you have to get quotes. Like if the project is happening, see, it's really hard. Okay, it's actually very hard right now because, like, let's say landscapers, well, actually, maybe not right now, but normally landscapers, contractors are booked like 2 months in advance. And then, for example, if quotes, you don't really want to have quotes, though, 2 months in advance, right? So now I think it's better to book them, maybe get like a rough quote, but most likely, even the contractors have already learned themselves is that this quote only lasts for like I think now even some are doing like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like it's that bad of a change, or at least at that time it was that bad of a change that they were giving like a 2, 3 week cap, and then they're like, it may change again. And so maybe get like a rough quote, but really get the real quote once they start, because like if the materials, if we start seeing materials going up and up and up again, like take that into consideration and realize like, yeah, it sucks. The budget is going out of control, but at the same time, either what happened with you where they just ghost you, actually they ghost me too, they ghost, and then they just disappear on the project, or like that, they may take your deposit and just disappear. But I don't see that happening a lot if you get the quote on the right time.
Okay.
You know, like if you're getting it like, let's say a week before, and like that, I think contractors have finally started learning how that works. Like, I mean, there's the contractors that are now like, will charge labor and you figure out the materials, just because materials are changing so much that it's like they don't even want the responsibility of material costs now. So it's just like, I think it's just like, you know, the transition, like not only everyone was going through a transition, right? Like contractors are trying to figure out, trying not to lose money. Like our project, for example, I mean, it was a huge project. It was a 400K project, but it was not supposed to be a 400K project. Like it was a 50K project. We went 100K over budget because of materials, right?
Oh, wow. Okay. Holy cow.
Yeah. So I don't think it shouldn't happen. Well, I guess because you're saying, because again, like I feel like COVID made things very weird, right? Because you had, for example, like that, they started at COVID. And then with you, like the whole, like that, like people were just like super emotional trying to deal with the lockdowns and everything. And then you're also trying to do your job, but you're like super hyper emotional. And then, you know, that happens, right? And then you get another contractor and they ghost. I don't think it's very normal like that. Like I think right now we should probably see like that, like people are adapting more, contractors are adapting and understanding. And as long as you go with your guts of like if they're good or not, I think you should be fine in the other sense. Like I think your intuition becomes very, very important. Like if you feel like something is wrong, go next. You know, like don't be like trying to work it out, be like, oh, you know, just be like, next, I need to find another person, you know. And it's like, if it's a struggle, because sometimes it is a struggle to find people, whatever, next, you know, like it's better to make sure you feel comfortable with them, that they're a person that answers your questions, you know, and like that, just like you in your gut, you feel like things are good.
Yeah.
Then go forward and just be prepared to like I think they're doing it now, right? Like just get the quote closer to the day to make sure. Be like, and I mean like that. I think they tell you now, right? Even with my husband, he just like he's like, here's the ballpark. He's like, we'll see once we start what it actually turns out to be at that time, right?
I like that, right? You definitely want to make with like someone with integrity and someone that will actually get the work done. And I don't know, like that you can trust too. Like trust but verify, you know? You still verify what they do, but like finding someone that you could trust, and especially when you're brand new or newer, like it's a bit harder find, you know, or like.
Well, and that's actually that you're saying Google reviews, any reviews, search them online, because this is like a pet peeve of mine, I have to say. See, for example, there's this one guy who was like, this company is shit. The windows are terrible as a window company. They don't know what they're doing. Like, they don't even know how to measure the windows, all this stuff, like complaining about the windows. And he had the name of the contractor there too. So I go search this guy, and he's like literally 2 stars from a 2-second check. I didn't even go any further. Like I did a check and at the very top, 2 stars. And I'm like, so you paid for what you got for. The guy, and then to me, I was just like, he bought probably windows from Home Depot, so they're not like custom made to fit the hole, right? And then he probably didn't charge for like framing it because it wasn't framed. You know, he probably said like, here, I'll just install the windows, right? Because there's actually a lot of them just install the windows. They don't actually like finish it off. Usually you have other people, especially on the interior,
they never finish the interior. They will finish exterior. In this case, they didn't finish exterior.
Yeah.
Maybe, but again, like 2 stars, they probably just bring you the windows and put it in and install it, but don't do anything else, right? Like research. It's like the most annoying thing because it's like you're angry because you were cheap and you didn't research and you didn't see that they're 2 stars, like I'm just like, that's your fault. Don't blame them. Like they're there for specific clientele. They're there for cheap clientele. Cheap clientele are not going to complain about those things because they know, yeah, 2 stars. I just need that freaking window in there and that's it. I don't really care if it's like I don't know what, like
Honestly, it's like, hey, they're catering to a specific person, and it's like,
yeah,
you know,
right.
probably won't care about whether it's like, as long as it's there and people can live in there roughly, like they're fine with that. Like their standards are not as high as what you would.
Exactly. And it's like you need to identify what your standard is, right? Like if you're okay with this 2 stars, then you're okay with it, but don't complain about it, right? Like if you want to be, like going into luxury market, you need someone with 5 stars, like you have to decide where in the range it is. And I mean, I would personally never go 2 stars because that's
like
a problem anytime. Like doesn't matter what area of renovations, because like that, like for example, like 2 stars will probably do exactly what the guy did, right? Like I'll give you the installation of the windows. Oh, but now the extra cost for like sealing it up from the outside is an extra cost, right? Like these are what those 2 star people are. They're people that will give you, for example, like, oh, I'll install the flooring, $5,000 for the flooring, and then it gets installed, and then there's no trims. Oh, that's an extra cost. And then if you don't know anything about renovations, you don't realize that the trims weren't a part of that cost.
Yeah,
Those are 2 star people, like they give you half the stuff, right?
that's true though. Like when you don't know like what's considered like installing flooring, or depending on the contractor too, like you said, like they have different expectations of what installing flooring means, whether they just do it or like do they put I don't know, the subfloor or like the padding, or do they do like the trim too, like. But I think when you start off, you're like, I just need the floors done, whatever that means, like.
Exactly. That word means so different to different people, right? Like, exactly. If you say, I need flooring done, I'm like, okay, I'll just buy vinyl flooring and that's it. Or like, oh, no, but I wanted to also get the padding in, like subfloor needs to be changed, it's falling apart. Then you're like, that's a completely different story, right?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, not everyone knows these things, but like understanding this is like a language thing, right? Like, what does that mean to you? Like to that contractor, what does that mean? What does that mean to me? Let's make sure we have the same terminology of what getting the floor done means.
Yeah, sure. Just that's why you have to be kind of like really specific, and like I think nowadays, like for our next projects, like very specific. These are exactly what we want, what it looks like, and
Mm-hmm.
so that we're all on the same page and very aligned.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think like that, like, I mean, I think you guys did very well anyways. And when it's the first one, everyone has problems with their first one. And to be honest, I don't know, I'm personally, I feel like the bigger the problem, the faster you learn, the quicker you go up, right? Because it's like you've now been sued, you've lost 2 contractors, didn't go through. Like the amount of learning you went through is like insane. Like, trust me, you will not have that problem happen to you again. Like, because you know what's happened, right? Like you've seen it happen and you've learned a lot from that. So that those kind of, I don't see like those kind of usually like that, like those are so impactful, and especially like in a money sense impactful, that they stick with you more, right?
Yeah, I think like sometimes when we look back at it, like we learned so much, not even just about renovations, but about people, like the soft skills that you learn when you have to deal with like people, like contractors or bad people, and you're like, fun, how come you're not getting this stuff done, to my expectations? And you really learn how to like talk to different people, what to say. Sometimes if you're a softie, like Larry and I were like, okay, maybe one person has to be a bad cop sometimes and one person has to be a soft cop, like a good cop, right? So we learned definitely a lot. And I don't know, it was a really good learning experience. And thankfully, like we did have still enough money to kind of cover it, because I could see how it could have went really bad sideways if you don't have the money. And if you're and like if you ask for, like, if you're gonna private lend, even more expensive money to try to finish it. And then for us, thankfully, the market went up. But if it was to go down, like right now, that's another thing you have to kind of. So I think you have to balance out, that, like, when it's worth it to continue, or when it's worth to, like, hey, cut your loss kind of thing. But that was a really
That and also, you said it would go down, but I think in your case it wouldn't really matter if it went down because you're planning to hold it long term anyways. No, isn't this a long term hold?
it was a long-term hold, but for us, our goal was to refinance it, because we wanted to pull out like all our money, right, or most of the money that we had. And thankfully, because it went up, we actually got a lot more of the money than we expected initially. So we were really happy. We're like, okay, I guess it was a 2-year project, but we pulled out basically almost like all our money. So it was like almost perfect
Awesome.
for to do it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And like that, to be honest, I felt like those were the years to make mistakes, right? like the market really helped you. You know what I mean?
That's correct. But we never, right? At that point in time, I thought, oh my gosh, I overpaid for this. And then I kind of bought more. But you know what? You just keep moving forward. You just move forward. And I think
Yeah.
like going through these hard times, like just making sure like you have that mindset, like going into real estate, like there can be these times. Because I know, and I hope Lee is with me sharing. I'm sure he is. He's not even on this probably. But like, he was very stressed throughout the whole thing. And some people can get really stressed, like when you're losing a lot of your money, you don't see progress in your house, and you're questioning if it's ever going to get done or how you're going to get done. It's like, it's really nerve-wracking. And it could be really like it could take a huge toll on your mental health too. And I think that really not worth it. Like, your health is way more important than, like, it's okay, like, losses happen, but I think having that long-term mindset is really good as well. Like you said, this was like a buy and hold, and we were planning to hold it for the long run. So we had that long-term mindset, and we're like, okay, as we just need to get this done, eventually we'll get the money back and whatnot. Just keep going at it. And so, yeah, mindset throughout the whole project is really important.
Yeah. And like even like that, like the two of you guys to help you out, right? Because it is like, and I feel like in any relationship, like we're usually all quite opposites in the relationship. So it's like that, like let's say one person we're super stressed, and the other one's like there to like stroke your head and be like, it's okay, it will be fixed, like we'll get through it, like. So it's just it's also good in that sense because it just helps to get everything through, right? Because like that, like each person has like the different strengths, and it's like one thing will happen and then it like messes with the other person, but then that person at least like will have the strength and the confidence to be like, don't worry, whatever, and then like things will vice versa change, right? So it's just, I think that's also just, I mean, like relationship partnership or partnership of whatever, just the partnerships I think is really helpful in that sense to just well, I mean, if you have that, I mean, I feel like you hope that that's there, that's, that it's like in a positive sense, helping each other out, finding that right person that you're, like that. Because there's always going to be, I feel like there's always one that's going to stress and like get super stressed, but then at least the other one to just be like, don't worry, we'll go through it and kind of calm you down from the stress, right?
That one person, or like even if you're working on it alone, maybe finding someone else that like that has experience, or that can like kind of like help you move forward to kind of like clear your mind and be like, hey, let's calm it down first, and then think more like logically, because when you're high stress, you're not thinking.
Yeah, or your community, right? Like the community can help, because it is true when you're alone, it is hard. I remember there was one project, like I was literally like hiding in my bed. I was just like hibernating for like 2 weeks because I was like so stressed out. I'm like, I need a break from this. And I was like, I'm not getting out of here. Well, I was getting out, but I mean, I felt like I was like hiding for a while because it's just like you said, like my mental health was important, right? And it's just like I just needed to like chill for a bit and just like decompress and figure it out. And like community help. But then the same thing, like in that sense, in that specific project, my husband wasn't involved, but he would still at least come and just kind of like calm me down and just be like, don't worry, you know, like what it wasn't even like it wasn't in the sense of like to provide solutions because he didn't really know what it was, but at least being there to just like calm down. Sometimes you just need a person to just be like, don't worry, you'll figure it out. Just relax and calm down. Like it was basically that kind of thing. Just like relax. And I was just like, okay.
That's
I'm like, yeah, you're right.
sometimes you just need someone to listen to you. It's like, don't give me I don't even want to hear a solution. I just want to me. Like just
Yeah.
vent it out.
Yeah, exactly. And so we totally did this all backwards because I was also realizing we don't even know what this property looks like, which is the very first conversation, the very first thing. So you want to tell us what the actual, like, what this house was? 3-story, I'm sorry, 2-story or something, or bungalow?
It was a bungalow, so this was in Kitchener, Ontario. So it was a bungalow, like cute red brick bungalow. There was only 2-bed, 1-bath upstairs, and then we also put a 2-bed, 1-bath downstairs in the basement. So thankfully this one had double parking, so we didn't Larry and I personally don't like tandem. Like us as used to be like tenants ourselves, we hate, I can't even imagine like working with a tenant.
Coordinating, right?
Us like properties, like we always want to make sure like, hey, there's enough parking for everyone. So we were happy. So there was like 2 parking spots side by side. So total they could park 4 or 5 cars. So that was good. So a typical nice cute bungalow in Kitchener.
And so so you added another unit then. This was like it turned into a duplex?
So we bought it in Kitchener in 2019 for like 390,000.
Mm-hmm.
It was like just outdated. The old owners were like older folks retiring. So like, it's just the typical like carpet, older kitchen. And then back in the days, I think this was a 1960s home or 1958. Their kitchens were like all the way in the back corner because no one wanted to see the kitchen. So we actually ended up moving the kitchen and one of the bedrooms. We swapped it so we could have an open concept. So now at the kitchen and the living room as an open concept. So it's
that's cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So then, okay, so this was a full renovation because you renovated upstairs and then you also had to build the downstairs, have a kitchen there. Was there already a bathroom there?
They already had, I think, half a bathroom, but we made it into a full bathroom. So our goal was like to do very minimal upstairs. Like we were actually going to leave the kitchen as is and whatnot, and then we were just mainly going to put most of our money into the basement. But our contractor actually skewed us throughout the whole thing, saying, "Oh, we should add this. Oh, we should add this," and we're like, "Okay, that makes sense. Like, yeah, let's add this door. Let's add this other thing, and we just went on the ride with them. So, which is why our scope kind of like grew from the beginning. And that's why you have clarity at the beginning. Otherwise, you're just going to get skewed throughout the whole journey. Like, oh yeah, we'll add this. Oh, we'll add this. And so that's kind of where.
And that actually kind of shows you that they're a contractor that's more of clients with residential side, I would say, right? Because usually I feel like that's something you tell your clients, or at least, like you're trying to find like a functional, nice layout, right? Whereas, I mean, nothing wrong with it, but like us investors, we don't like, you don't want to like spend money on things that don't make sense, right? I mean, I don't know in the sense maybe it did, because it is nice to do that for resale. But for example, if at least let's say in that case you didn't have the budget, maybe it wasn't worth it, just like leave it as it is. Like in a rental property sense, it doesn't matter where the kitchen is, for example, right? And it's just like you leave it and you just want to at least finish it to look nice.
Exactly. 100%.
And so, so what was your initial budget on the renovations?
So our initial budget, so our contractor gave us three kind of levels. Our first one was 80,000, which was mainly just basement and maybe some cosmetic work upstairs. Our second one, I think, was 100K. Can't remember what it was. And then 120 was the full gut of the whole house. And he would just put the 2 units. Of course, at that time, we just thought about cheapness. We were like, yo, we're cheap. 80 like bare minimum. So we ended up getting the 80K the option just to do the basement. But like I said before, like because of the delays, because we had to hire a second contractor, because we had to also finish the project ourselves, we ended up, I think, $150,000 for the total rent.
And then 2 years with no tenants inside, right? Or at least one, because you guys said you guys were living in one side, so no tenants for whichever you weren't living in.
Exactly. So we weren't living in there for a few months because like it was in demolition mode. So we actually were like Airbnb hopping. We literally hopped from different Airbnbs, whichever ones were the cheapest, because we were just cheap. We weren't willing to pay like $100 per night. We're like, where's the cheapest Airbnb? So we always kept on hopping them, and all our stuff was in our car. So we had like a SUV. We just shoved everything that we had. Thankfully, we didn't have much stuff. So it was just like a few luggage. But yeah, that was just, yeah, it was tough. A lot, and that $150,000 does include the carrying costs of like everything, like what the Airbnb costs that we put. So we want to make sure, hey, we are, because that's all part of the renovation too.
It is, yeah, that's true. Because and that's a good point that you make that, because I feel like a lot of people don't take that into consideration, that like the actual costs involved. Like there are other things like that. In your case, you're planning to house hack, so you want to make sure that for the time while your part of the house is getting done, that you have a place to obviously stay. And so it's like if you don't think of it, all of a sudden you're like sleeping in the car because you don't have a budget.
That's so true. Exactly. It's like not just, the renovation costs and the down payment and the closing costs. It's like, yeah, it's like all the utility bills that we have to keep paying for because no one's even living there, but you still have to pay it to like maintain the place for contractors, or like for us to still use the tools because we need like hydro or whatnot, or a bathroom. Important. A working bathroom.
Exactly. And what are the other things? Okay, I think those are all the numbers, right? So, and you said, how much did you manage to get out? You said you got almost a perfect burst, so around like plus your down payment. I guess like you were able to get like your down payment out plus your most of your renovations out.
So we bought it at $390. Initially, our reno was supposed to be $80,000. At that time, the market for like a duplex that we were roughly estimating for an ARV was $580. So we were willing to, I think, keep like the down payment into the property. Of course, as the market went up, when we refinanced it, we refinanced it in 2021, near the end of 2021. We refinanced it for $680. So we, based off of all the calculations when we did it, we were able to pull out most of the money. We left in $30,000. So because Larry and I both split it, he has $15,000 in the property, and I have $15,000 in the property that like we left there. But we were pretty happy with it, and then we ended up Airbnb-ing it afterwards. And then now we Airbnb both units because we live in Calgary now, so we just remotely manage it. So
that's awesome. So that's great. That's great that everything like that, it ended up working out. And like, were you expecting it to be 100% burr when you first bought it?
No.
So, or did you even know about that strategy at the time?
I think I did, but then I think I heard like, that's like never like, that's like a unicorn. That's almost like non-existent in Ontario, finding a perfect burr. So based off of us talking to all the other investors, they were saying like a good deal was just pulling out all your renovation costs. So that was our expectation when we started. Like, it was just like, as long as we pull our all of the renovation costs, we're willing to leave like the down payment in there.
That's a good point. And also, like you said, I think even just in general, I feel like because I mean, if you can get the perfect burr, then it's nice to get it done whenever it's done. Like, let's say in 6 months to a year, you do the refi. But I know there's investors that will wait it out for like 2 to 3 years and then just pull out all their, and then because usually by that time they're able to just pull all the money out because, like it's like appreciation has happened enough, or they calculate it in that way or whatever.
I don't know if it's recently or whatnot. Like someone told me, I don't know, someone confirmed, but like I think you have to wait a certain period of time before you could actually refinance now. Because for us, we were planning to refinance 4 months, and like do a quick renovation and then refinance in 4 months. But someone told me now it's like you actually have to hold it for a certain period of time before you could actually refinance.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know like or?
I don't know. I knew, for example, already before,
Mm-hmm.
majority of A lenders already you had to wait a year.
Okay.
So, and now with the way the market is, I would believe you that they're not going to let you refinance your money all out, or like you can refinance, but they won't go. Like I've seen, for example, people do refinances, and they go to like 60%, which is basically like none of your money gets out or something. You know, like they don't actually refinance enough for it to be worth it for you because
Yeah.
like they just won't do it, right? Because it's just like the market is so scary right now to everyone. It's just like how much more is it going to drop, right? That's probably the thoughts in banks. So I believe you because there's a lot of, and to be honest, like I mean, tips for everyone. You need to be talking to like as many mortgage brokers as you can right now because it's like things are changing like by the month. You know, it's like, and the thing is, all banks are setting their own different types of rules too. So it's not as if, you know, you look at one bank and then it falls across the exact same to others. It's like even all banks are making their own decisions on how they decide they're going to go through the next steps for like what's happening now. So it's just like you
Just
have to like talk to as many mortgage brokers as you can, or like or even like the agents at the different banks, and just understand what's going on because you just are hearing like something change. Like I think now I was hearing things like with mortgages that depending on how many houses you have,
okay.
they may not even like even if you do qualify to get another house, they may just make it harder for you to get it. So they like don't allow you to get that other house. Like they'll say like, you know, their TDS ratios, for example, are much lower then, and then so it doesn't work that you can get it. So it's like also just being careful and if you do decide, let's say you're gonna do a burr, like actually, like to be honest, doing a burr, like I say right now, like think of a long-term burr for now and hope for the best that you can do short because like maybe you can burr like you think you can with your income and like that. Like for example, right now it seems like they're starting to make changes to how the TDS ratios are working. And they say apparently like each bank is deciding the way they do it themselves. Like the government just is going to pass the law or has passed it, and it's up to them. But it's like but they don't have to follow it. They can decide, or they can even decide with who they do it, right? So I feel like, for example, it sounds like they're trying to target investors, right? Because it's like if the investors have a lot of houses, that's very risky to them. Whereas like if you're a first-time home buyer, they probably wouldn't even mind giving you whatever for the mortgage. Whereas like if you already have two houses or even like have one, they may be like, you're very risky, like
You're left.
person right now for them. Yeah.
And I think, you know, with you know, the market that went down or you know, that's going down and then like if a lot of people leverage, you know, they're getting to the point where like even for our property for Kitchener, like we were like cash flowing quite a bit doing Airbnb, but right now because of interest rates going up, we have an adjustable variable, so like our payments are going up, and we just got a letter recently saying, hey, your interest rate is now 5.9%. I was like, oh yeah, we're real. Like when Larry and I calculate it, we're basically like breaking even at this point. Even Airbnb, we're breaking even. I was like, man, I can't imagine if we were doing a long term on this because we would be losing money at that point, or cash flow. Yeah. So really making sure that exit strategy nowadays is super important. And even like at work, like what I learned from working as an underwriter is like the exit strategy is so important to focus on. Like really understanding the exit strategy, like how you'll exit it. And like having multiple, because like I think a lot of people get excited at the upfront and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy it and that's great, but then it's like you have to make sure that the exit actually makes sense. Like, can you qualify for what you're trying to look for? Like, you know, which lender,
or just hold it as is. Like to be honest, I think the very final exit strategy is what happens if you can't do nothing and you're stuck with it. Like I feel like that's like at least that's what our final is. Everything I do, because we're still looking for flips. But our final strategy is like, what if we can't even refinance it? We have to stay with it, and then we're just going with it. What does that mean to us? You know, it's just like that. I feel like that's like the final exit strategy. You know, like you're just stuck with it.
Stuck with it, or it's like, okay, sell it. You know, it's like, can you, you know, or is it worth?
But that's what I mean. But if you can't sell it because the things are slow, or like, can you sell? Like, what kind of losses are you willing to lose? You know, to sell it, right? It's just like knowing what's going on because things just change so much that it's just like that, making sure that you know you can handle it, and it's like you can manage the stress. Because if not, like that, like you don't want to deal with your stress, like your health.
Yeah, true. I think
Mm-hmm.
like what I'm hearing is like, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, they thought they could sell and then like they can't now, right? Because they're not getting the number that they're looking for. So they actually end up holding it, but then their cash flow negative because like they renovated to a really nice looking, you know, property that was meant for a flip, but now they're trying to rent it. So they're not even getting, you know, so I don't know. It's a tough decision and you have to decide whether, you know, you could handle the cash flow negative, but at the same time, you don't know when the market is going to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, and well, I mean, and that's what I mean. I mean, people who are doing like analyzing properties right now, because obviously if you did in the past, then it's different, right? You either have to cut your losses, try to sell it, whatever it works. But what I mean is like for people who are doing properties now, I would say like make your final exit strategy. Like, can I hold on to this if I have to stick with the conditions of on buy of what it is? If I go private, well, maybe you can probably get out of a private, but like if I go private and I'm like doing this rent of spending this much money, you know, and then these are the rents right now, you know, can I stick with that if I have to? Like, if that's like the worst end all, what is it? Like, I feel like that strategy needs to be always in there at the very end right now. Like, if you're looking at properties right now.
I think that's so true.
And then still have the other ones.
I think that's so true. As long as you're okay with the worst case scenario, you know, like you'll be fine. You know, you'll make it through at the end of the
And
day.
like even the same thing, right? If you're planning to flip, what's your bottom lumber, right? Like when do you cut that off and you're saying like I'm holding long term, right? You know, or like that, like or like where is my I'm willing to lose this much money? You know, like okay, fine, like this is my bottom number, and then this number, if I don't hit this number, that means let's say I go to long term hold, let's say.
It's so true. Like, because right after that Burley, we did a flip, and like we were doing it like we bought it in 2021. I'll be quick because I know we're like over time, but like we sold like right when it was like after the first interest rate hike or the second one. And I think the thing is like we didn't even realize the market was going downwards, but and then so yeah, like we ended up selling and like a lot of people were pricing it, you know, because everything was going high. Like I think they were like pricing it really low to get multiple offers. Like that's what their expectations were. When we were selling, because we saw the market going down, we just said like, okay, this is what we need. And then when we got an offer with that, we decided, okay, let's just go. Like, don't even get emotional. Don't think, oh, what if like we waited out one more week to get like, you know, like more overbid and like more bids. I was like, honestly, just end it here and then move on, right? Like it's emotional when you're selling. You don't want to be.
Yeah, it's so true. It is an emotional roller coaster, and like it was great that you guys did that because like that you had your number. Because it's funny, we did the same thing with ours that sold last year, a flip.
Yeah.
We same thing. We're like, this is our number. We don't want to be asking for a crazy amount, and like trying to like see who's gonna buy it. We're like,
Yeah.
we're good with this, and it ended up going like same thing as what you said, and not being because that happened to someone else that I know that they were like, oh, we can get a better offer. Never came, and they actually went downward because of last year, right? Things were dropping, and but then the height of the February March timeframe, you know, got to everyone's heads, right?
Yeah.
And
our expectation, the market always goes up, you know.
Yeah, oh my God, it's crazy. Any final words, any little last things that you wanted to say about this?
No, I
Or
think
in general?
this was really great. Like, thank you so much for inviting me, by the way. Like, I just think it's fun to kind of share and like, share with other people, and like, because we all go through a journey differently, and we all experience things differently. So I do think like you could always learn like a little nugget from everyone you talk to. So definitely really fun.
100%. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. Yeah, exactly what you said. It's just awesome to have, you here and other people come, guests coming, because like that, we all learn from each other, and it just helps, especially in these times that things are just, I feel like they're changing on the fly, to be honest. And it's just like we all need to be talking a lot with each other, because it's like we're all in our different phases. Like you may be in the middle of a project, I'm starting one, and I'd be like, hey, I want to anticipate what's happening in the middle of your project because I may be going into the middle of mine, and you know what the material prices are like. You can see if they're going up or whatever. It's like things are just so much changing right now. It's like you have to be talking to everyone to see what everyone else is seeing.
I think that's amazing too. Like just like that community, and also like the community you're building too. Just like being able to connect, right? Like every time you bring someone new, it's like, oh, who's this person? What's their experience? And then I think in the real estate investor realm, at least like what I felt is like everyone's super open. Like everyone's super open. Like you could literally reach out on Instagram and people just reply back, and you're like, oh, that was not that bad. And I bet you're probably like your net worth is like $100 million, and you're talking to me. Everyone's very nice, honestly. Like I think that's the best way. Honestly, adding
Or maybe just an amazing networks, right? But yeah, it's so important. Like the network is so important to have, because it's like exactly what you say. Like everyone's just so open about sharing and helping, and like you need that, right? And like that, if you're having a downtime, either you go online to just see what people are doing and that motivates you, or go online to ask for some support and they're still going to help you, and give you some extra like push of motivation, or some like positive boosting.
That's so true. There's always someone that's willing to like push us. And I see Larry join, so hey Larry. But like even so, every time we feel down because we're not doing as much, like he always brings us up. Like his energy is like vibrant. It's like you just need someone to kind of push you, and you're like, yeah, you're right. I can just keep moving, just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It was so much fun to hear about your project and to learn from all like your learnings. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Diana, for like just inviting me. And thanks everyone that joined.
Yeah, thank you everyone. We'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye, Melissa. Bye, everyone.
Okay.